Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Maxie Edward Ackerman, Ronald Paul Akins, Arthur Lee Andrews, Clarence Joseph Babin Jr., Tommy Baines, Michael Bradford Baptiste, Joe Wilson Barnes, Jeffrey Michael Barron, Arthur Wayne Bartlett Sr., David Allen Barton, Douglas Bruce Bastier, Martin Batchelor Jr., Joseph Chris Battle, Bobby Ray Baxter, Lawrence Frederick Beals, Danelle Bell, James E. Bentley Jr., Harold Douglas Biller, Frederick A. Billingham Jr., James Curtis Blount, Jesse James Bolton, Michael John Brelanthin, Franklin Vincent Brodnick, Robert Henry Brogan, Barton W. Brooks, Joe Henry Brown, James Robert Bruder, Richard Conrad Brunn, Franklin Delano Bryan, Keith Charles Buckingham, Michael Christopher Burns, Michael Thomas Calandrino, Daniel David Callahan, John Bernard Causey, Lester Eugene Chambers, Chad Allen Charlesworth, Kenneth Foster Chasteen, Kenneth William Clare, Ronnie Lee Clark, David Errol Clark, Doyle Gregory Clay, Francis Warren Cody, Robert Allen Coffey, William Eyre Coggeshall, Peter Kogel, Noble Collins Jr., Jerry Lee Collister, Clifford Dale Combs, Thomas Joseph Cooney, Bruce Wayne Curtis, Kendall Dwayne Cutbirth, Walton Garland Daly, Kenneth Davis, Dennis Allen Davison, William Clarence Dayton, Larry A. De La Rosa, Jr., Odell Dickens, Thomas George Dixon, Lawrence Andre Dernberger, Jerry Lee Dodson, Lawrence Gerard Donaldson, Gerald Tyler Douglas, Jr., Leon Delbert Eckhart, Samuel Alvin Eckloff,
Donovan Keith Elwell, Richard J. Faulkner, William Charles Fitzroy, Peter Jan Filipiak, Mark Joseph Fitzgerald, Raymond Lloyd Flint, Douglas Bruce Forsberg, Howard Thomas Fox, William J. Franks, Jesse Clifford Fry, Robert Jean Galbraith, Stephen Vargas Garcia, Juan Gaston, Charles Gregory Geller, William Arthur Gibson, Kenneth Ray Gillum, Floyd Harold Goff, Jose Luis Gonzalez, Adolfo Gonzalez Lopez, Robert Howard Granoff, Louis Frederick Griffin, Joseph E. Griffiths, Thomas Neal Gross, Dennis Francis Gulick, William Ashley Gunnels, Marvin Lewis Hall, John Thomas Hare, Joseph Leslie Hart, Charles Edward Hassler, Jr., Phillips Hayes III, Robert Louis Hurd, Richard Wayne Heim, Manuelito Leopold Herrera, Arnold Hilb Shaleen, Carl Wayne Hill, Verlin Don Holderby, Russell James Holland, Roger Dale Holmes, Douglas Allen Howard, Ernest Clarence Howell, William Edward Huff, Gordon K. Hughes, William Howard Hunt, Lemuel Isabel, Donald Jacques, Michael Lee Jenkins, Stanley Johnson, Arthur Anthony Johnson, Philip David Johnson, Alan Paul Johnson, Gerald Johnson, Edward A. Johnson, Jr., Roosevelt Johnson, Jr., David Neal Johnston, William Barton Jones, Roman Lee Jones, Bruce Edwin Jones, Robert Eugene Carr, Edward Casnow, Harry David Charles Keller, Norman Wade Kellum, Roger Michael Kittleson, Chester Joseph Cosdran, Larry William Kraft,
Ronald Lee Custaborder, Michael John Latteroot, James Franklin M. Laird, Walter Lauren Lamar, Richard Louis Lanstow, Dennis Eugene Lane, Louis Nelson Langford, John Alfred Lassiter, Leslie Ross Lewis, Donald Randall Lewis, James Dwight Logan, John Lopez, Peter Mitchell Lopez, Jr., Philip Anthony Lotta, Marion Wayne Lyons, Samuel Cornelius Macon, John Joseph McGee, David Allen Mallory, Michael Kevin Maloney, Ronald John Monka, William Clifton Marsh, Charles Thomas Martin, Robert Allen McCarthy, George McClelland, Richard Byers McDaniel, Henry MacDonald III, Thomas Howard McGrath, Richard Wayne Mackenzie, Kim Elmer Meads, Tommy Neal Miller, Clarence Stephen Miller, Lloyd Whitfield Moore, Charles Kenneth Moran, Jr., William David Morgan, William Jor Morgan, Robert Boyd Musgrove, Patrick John Maraca, William Lester Newsom, George Alfred Odiorne, Joseph P. Oliphant, Jr., Frank Dennis Ortega, Porfirio M. Ovalle, Jr., Earl Ephraim Parker, Thomas Edward Parker, George Paranagian, Jr., Robert Leon Pearson, Glover Austin Peeler III, David Douglas Peoples, Jr., James Douglas Peschel, William T. Pittman, Victor Lynn Poor, Calvin Ray Prater, James Irving Pratt, Gerald Prisbelinski, Luis A. Quinones Rodriguez, Randolph Raymond Ramsey, Frederick R. Ratcliffe, Jr., Fred Leighton Ricard, Jr., Jeffrey Randall Reek, Joe Louis Rivera, Arnold Javier Rivera, Charles Edward Robina, Nathan Leon Robinson, Royce Everett Rowe,
Roy James Rogers, Herberto Romelio Oyula, James Michael Root, Gustavo Rutger Jr., Willie Jerome Ruff, David Lynn Rutgers, Robinson Santiago, Bruce Allen Saunders, Richard Michael Scala, David Clifton Scarborough, Joseph Richard Schnell, Daniel Richard Shurin, James Ellison Scott, Walter Philip Steele, Jr., Alan Morris Sharp, Michael David Sheehan, Stephen Andrew Shealy, Larry Joseph Sikorsky, Robert Louis Simmons, Edward Singleton, Jr., Patrick Skeet, Walter Francis Skinner, Albert Ward Schmar, Jr., Kerry Wayne Smith, James Edward Smith, Douglas Wayne Smith, Willie Franklin Smith, Nicholas Sorchacki, Richard Keith Somers, Forrest F.S. Spittler, John Raymond Stevenson, Jerry Lee Stout, Sidney Taylor Stratton, John Michael Sullivan, Norman Roger Superint, James Kenneth Sutton, Frank Adam Szymanski IV, James Michael Termini, Clayton Joseph Thierol, David Eugene Thomas, James Vincent Thornton, James Elroy Titus, Gerwin Philip Toozy, Gerald Francis Tracy, Robert Hill Trail III, James Eric Tucker, Larry Josh Tyler, Kenneth Frank Underwood, David Franklin Vandercook, Thomas Joseph Vizu, Thomas Dean Vincent, Robert John Wade, Donald James Wade, Martin Walker, Jr., Samuel Ray Wall, Donald Kevin Walsh, Truman J. Walsh, Albert Ward, Thomas Craig Warner, James Edward Watson, Ronell Louis Waugh, Frederick Carl Weber, George W. Weldy, Jr., James Edward Wells,
Larry Allen Wessinger, Donald Eugene Whitaker, George David Whitelaw, Robert Arthur Weedman, Frederick Thomas Williams, Johnny Glenn Williams, Bobby Wilson, Jerry Lynn Winningham, James Edward Wise, Clyde William Withy, James Anthony Wood, George Wally Woodall, William Stephen Woods, Larry Lee Woolham, Barry Milcom Wapinski, Michael Lee Zappia, Gerald David Zawadzki, John Malcolm Zelenik, Michael Charles Zeller,